For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
That's good. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Counterterrorism officials have warned mass transit systems around the country to increase patrols after they discovered that a group of individuals within the United States were allegedly planning to detonate backpack bombs aboard New York City. Last month, we've once again been reminded that terrorists are still targeting U.S. mass transit systems and other major landmarks. We have to continue to be proactive against those seeking to do us harm and minimize our vulnerabilities, especially vulnerabilities on U.S. soil. I'd like to discuss one continuing threat that needs to be addressed. In 2002, 2003, and 2004, personnel from Iran, a designated state sponsor of terrorism, were caught photographing and videotaping the New York City subway and other popular landmarks. I asked my colleagues and the American people to think about why Iranian personnel would photograph and videotape the New York subway system and other popular sites. I'm referring to individuals from state sponsors of terrorism that are here with diplomatic immunity, supposedly in the United States for official business at the United Nations. Let me be clear. Personnel from a state sponsor of terrorism have been caught on numerous occasions spying. What do you think they intended to do with that information, the videotapes and photos? These are not our friends. A few, but not all, of these individuals were expelled by the U.S. Department of State. Between 2004 and 2009, the State Department issued over 8,600 visas to delegates and representatives from countries designated as state sponsors of terrorism. Through the 1947 United Nations Headquarters Act, the United States is required to allow diplomats and personnel in the United States for official business at the United Nations Headquarters Complex in New York City, including personnel from countries who otherwise would be ineligible for U.S. visas. We can't afford to take these threats lightly. The presence of hundreds of individuals with diplomatic immunity from countries designated as state sponsors of terrorism is an overwhelming and expensive task for U.S. counterterrorism and counterintelligence resources. Michelle Van Cleve, the U.S. National Counterintelligence Executive from 2003 to 2006, put it well when she said, quote, while the FBI, by far America's premier counterintelligence agency, is assigned responsibility for countering all foreign intelligence operations in the United States, it lacks the manpower, the resources, the training, and probably the public support to venture into the complex grounds of analyzing the vast foreign presence in the country to identify the intelligence operations embedded therein, unquote. Again, quote, the counterintelligence problem is not one of sheer numbers, though by any measure there are more foreign intelligence operators in the United States than we have personnel to address them. The large and more compelling issue is the scope of their activities. Historically, embassies and other diplomatic establishments within the United States have served as a hub for foreign intelligence activities because of the operational security that they afford, unquote. Why are we helping state sponsors of terrorism gather intelligence information within the United States? When will and where will we draw the line? If we can't stop these people from coming to the United States, at least what we can do is limit their access to our country by dramatically limiting the radius that personnel from state sponsors of terrorism are permitted to travel. Congressman Dan Broun and I have introduced H.R. 3611, the Limits Act, limiting the intrusive miles of international terrorist sponsors, which would limit personnel from state sponsors of terrorism to a half-mile radius of the UN complex. A half mile is more than enough space for personnel from state sponsors of terrorism to obtain lodging, food, and other necessities, and it will be an easier and more cost-effective use of U.S. counterterrorism and counterintelligence resources, as well as the New York Police Department. The FBI's top two priorities are to, number one, protect the United States from a terrorist attack, and number two, protect the United States against foreign intelligence operations and espionage. When it comes to state sponsors of terrorism, with diplomatic community in our country, it is past time to make the FBI's job a little easier. I urge my colleagues to co-sponsor the Limits Act and restrict the access of terrorism on U.S. soil. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.